Newcastle United travel to Everton on Saturday in the Premier League, and it's going to be a really, really crucial game for the direction of the season. In this video, I'll explain why, and also tell you about the big change I would make to the starting 11. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Welcome back to another Premier League preview. This time it's Everton. It's a crucial game at Goodison Park for many reasons, but before we get into it, please hit the thumbs up on this video, subscribe to the channel, and in the comments let me know your thoughts, and also let me know what sort of thing you'd like to see. I'm trying to jazz up the previews on these videos, so I'm going to do a couple of different things I'm going to try today. A couple of different suggestions from you, from a few of you guys as well. There's also something in the works as well, which could be very different on the channel that's coming as well, which is non-Newcastle United, a new podcast with me and a friend of mine. It'll be football, it'll be nostalgia, it'll be debate, it'll be general. It will not be on Newcastle United, but please do subscribe and get involved with that as well. It'll be really, really helpful to help get that off the ground. It'll be on this channel in video form, but also on Spotify or somewhere else for an audio form. We'll get straight into this video now, and I think that this one's a really crucial game for Newcastle for many reasons. I think it's been a difficult start to the season for reasons that we keep talking about. Newcastle have been poor away from home this season. Obviously, they've drawn with Bournemouth and sort of came into that game late on. They were very lucky to get their win at Wolves. Then they were beaten comprehensively and easily by Fulham, and that can't happen again. And I think it undercut Newcastle's season last year that they couldn't go away from home and win the games that they should. Even at the start of the season, they struggled. They only won one game in that first half of the season away from home, and that was that 8-0 win at Sheffield United. At that stage, it felt like the season, which was about a year ago actually. It was just past the year anniversary last week, and at that stage of last season, it really felt like Newcastle were on to something. They were going to be fine. It was going to be Newcastle's progression was going to continue, and then they struggled to win away from home. They kept drawing games, losing games, and we're at that same stage now. And I think this is a sort of crossroads moment for Newcastle in terms of this season and in terms of what happens. And Everton being the place that they're going is not ideal because they don't have a good record at Goodison Park generally. In recent times, they've struggled when they really, with the sort of expectation that they should be winning this game. Obviously, for years it was a difficult place to go with David Moyes and Roberto Martinez and all those sorts of managers when Newcastle was struggling. Obviously, Carlo Ancelotti, that game where under Steve Bruce, when Florian Reguilón scored 2 in the last minute to save a 2-2 draw from being 2-0 down from absolutely nowhere. That sort of era of Everton Newcastle, that dynamic has changed over since the takeover. Newcastle have been in a really strong position on the pitch, and Everton have been struggling and battling against relegation. They won the first game after the takeover 1-0, and Alex Iwobi scored in the last minute, which was a crazy game, and it really sort of ignited them to stay up under Frank Lampard. Then Newcastle won the following season 4-1 in their run to the Champions League. And then last season, obviously, that 3-0 defeat in December, which really started that rotten run. So you can see how crucial every game has been, either for Newcastle or for Everton going into this game. But for Newcastle, I think it's massive because it's at that crossroads where Newcastle have to prove themselves. They've played really well against City. There needs to be a win in this game to build on that. They were unconvincing against Wimbledon, but I said in my live reaction to that it's all about getting through, meeting Chelsea, getting closer to Wembley, hopefully getting closer to a first trophy since 1969. That's all that matters in that instance. But I think with every passing game, when there's no big performance, at least dominant performance that leads to a win, the pressure comes onto it in even bigger in the next game. And I think that's the case here. Newcastle need a really big result here to get themselves going, but also need a big performance as well. And I think that's why, if they don't get both of those, obviously you caveat I was saying a win's a win, you take it, but it then piles pressure. This is the problem with the Wolves game. I think there's gotten to a point where Newcastle need to show themselves as a big performing team, as a big team that belongs at the top of the table. And because the longer they go without a really dominant, easing in performance and comfortable victory, the more it'll feel like they don't belong at the top, where places like, even Aston Villa, despite their win over Bayern Munich at the start of this season, they've started like they belong there. Chelsea have started fantastically as well. So there's a lot of pressure on Newcastle to really deliver. And I think this is a sort of crossroads moment for this game. And they have enough to win this game. It'll be a revert to type in terms of the way that the game will probably play out, in terms of Newcastle should have most of the ball. they'll have to do something with it. I think they showed the one worrying thing in the midweek game against Wimbledon was that without Gordon on the pitch and without Bruno in midfield from the start, they lacked that ability to find the pass and unlock a team, and they struggle to do that generally. This is kind of what I was saying on my live stream, is that Newcastle try to play this possession base, but they're not very good at keeping the ball and doing something with it, but they're also not very good at running at teams and unlocking teams, and that's why I come up with a team that I would pick, and I'll put it on screen now, that is not the same team as Man City. It's got some changes in there, and I'll explain why. I'm going back to the Will Asula starting up front thing, because I think Gordon was great against Man City, but I think we've shown in these away games that it isn't good, that he doesn't penetrate enough. Newcastle can't break the lines enough. It'd be good to put him on the right in this game, I think. Joelinton on the left, because of the issue that I mentioned last week with Joelinton is and his ability, and the problem that I see, what I would call the Joelinton conundrum. If you haven't checked that video out, I'll put it in the description for you to go back and look at it, because I think there's a really big point there about his future at the club. What happens with Joelinton going forward when Newcastle are trying to progress into this possession-based style that doesn't suit him and it doesn't play into his strengths, when we know what Joelinton thrives when he's allowed to play into his strengths. The fact that he's not going to be able to do that again in Goodison Park means that for me he isn't the ideal player to play in the midfield. I would bring Willokin in the midfield alongside Tonali and Bruno, Joelinton on the left. Then you get that link up between Joelinton and Willock, which suits them both perfectly, and you would think would give Newcastle a better chance of breaking a deep defensive low block against Everton. And Sean Dyche is not one to... We know how Sean Dyche is going to play. He's not one to come and attack teams. Newcastle should understand what they're going to go into at Goodison Park, and what they're going to go into is a difficult situation where they have to make the first move. And Willock and Joelinton have been really, they've got a great link up down that left hand side. I've got Lewis Hall at left back as well, which would create an overload on that side. It would cause Everton problems down the wings, and I think that's crucially where Newcastle need to get the best out of this game. They need to break the lines and create that space in the midfield, and then Gordon on the right, because I think this new phenomenon of starters and finishers, not starters and substitutes, and I think that's sort of becoming more clear cut because of the 5 substitutes thing. And I think Harvey Barnes is a better finisher in games. I think he comes on, picks off tiring defenders, and can add to his goal tally. He's much better as an impact player. I think that's been the way it's always been at Newcastle, and I'd love to see him coming off the bench as an impact player. Gordon on the right, Asula down the middle, because as I say, Gordon down the middle does not stretch teams, doesn't spin the defenders. I think that's the thing that Asula's, there was no goal Tuesday night, but there was a lot of the good things that we know that he can do. Obviously, I don't think this is likely to happen. I'll say that again, but I just think that stylistically, the team that Eddie Howe needs to play will not be the team he picks, because he needs to stretch the Everton defence, get in behind them, and create space either by pushing the Everton defence back and creating more space in the midfield for someone like Bruno to come onto, Willett to come onto, or to stretch it with Gordon and Joelinton. Obviously, Gordon playing on the right means that he can stretch them. He can go on the outside as well as coming on his left foot as well. So I think the fact that this is that team that I think is really, really strong. It's quite unorthodox. It's unlikely to be the team that Eddie Howe picks, but this is the thing. I think he needs to mix it up and take risks. This is the thing that you guys in the chat from Wednesday morning, when we talked about the Wimbledon game, said that the issue with Eddie Howe is he doesn't take risks, and the team they need to take risks on and off the pitch, but they've got somebody in place who likes to be in control and likes to know what he's getting. And I think it's all right to know what you're getting out of your team, but if the team isn't doing what you're asking it to and what you need it to and doing enough to get results, then it's an issue. And I think that's the thing. I was convinced against Fulham that Will Asula should have started. I'm convinced in this game, not necessarily because Will Asula has got the quality yet. It's not about that. But I think Anthony Gordon doesn't have the quality down the middle when the team is a low block and Newcastle need to stretch teams. He isn't particularly. He doesn't spin defenders. He doesn't he doesn't put bully defenders. He can't do. He doesn't have that physical focal point. That's what I think Newcastle need in this game. That's why I'm going for Will Asula, the same as against Fulham. But the difference in this game is Joelinton pulling him onto the left, getting him out of that midfield taking the pressure off him on the ball, and also allowing him to link up better with Willock, and having that as being getting those two players on the pitch, that dynamism, that energy, that link up can hopefully break down this Everton defensive line. Everton won their first home game of the season last week. They'll be in confident mood. They'll be looking for a victory in this game, and I think it's going to be really difficult. Everton are not the best team on paper, but they always seem to have the wherewithal of getting a result, particularly under Sean Dyche. They are a battling side. They are a difficult team to break down at the best, and I think Newcastle have shown that they struggle to break teams down. So the setup of this game is obvious. If you're in Everton's shoes, you should be absolutely desperately trying to give Newcastle the ball and saying, right, break us down. If you're Newcastle, you need to be thinking of ways to do that and being a little bit different. I think that's why this team, for me, works better than it does otherwise, because I think there's an issue with the way that Newcastle have been going about games in recent weeks. Thanks very much for joining me on this video. Please like, share and subscribe. And as I say, there is going to be coming a new football podcast on the YouTube channel and on audio forms as well, between me and our new co-host. More on that in the next coming weeks. Non-Newcastle United though, so it will be very different to the other videos that I'm doing. They'll still be here. As I said to you at the start of the season, that with my channel update, I am trying to diversify and go away from Newcastle United with some of my content. The Newcastle content will always stay though. Thanks very much for joining me. Like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you for a live reaction after the game, immediately after the game on Saturday night, here to break down what happens at Goodison Park. Thank you very much. Cheers.